In this lecture, we are going to see the web server hacking. Before going to the web server hacking methodologies and all, first of all, we should understand what is a web server and what are the different categories of web server, how this web server will provide the functionality or resources or services to the client's request, and these concepts must be familiar. And at the same time, we must also familiar with the architecture of the web server. Architecture in the sense, what are the components available, how these components are interconnected, and what are the different supporting files, and what are the default logging system, and how the certificates like security certificates will be provided. These are the different components of any web server that you must be aware of before moving on to the performing of the web server attacks or practicing of the web server attacks. So for this, I am going to give you the brief introduction of the web servers. Actually, the web servers are the resources, or you can say resource containers, which especially will run on some remote computers, especially high configuration computers that are available in the remote site. And why it is remote site in the sense, any user from anywhere in the world can connect to that particular system. So in that context, it is a remote system. So web applications are the programs which run under the remote web servers and can be available to the client 24 by 7, 365 days. Basically, there are two terminologies available in servers concept, especially the web servers concept, that are web servers and application servers. Web servers are the subset of the application servers. That means application servers are the greater than web servers. So application servers will provide more functionality than the web servers. We'll see now what are the services provided by the web servers. Web servers, actually, it is especially for the web container. That means it will only give the facility for the running of the components that are related to the web, such as HTML, HTTP protocol, and SMTP protocol, these kind of things. Especially this is good for the static HTML pages, and it consumes low memory because no heavy process will run on the web server. So it is very low. It consumes very low memory, and also consumes CPU, less CPU, or we can say low CPU cycles. It provides runtime environment for the web applications, especially designed with the static web pages, HTML and JavaScript, etc. Absence of multi-threading. Here there is no multi-threading. Only a single thread of control will be there. No multiple threads of controls are there. Next is it supports HTTP protocol. Simple example is Apache. In all the Linux operating systems, you will find Apache HTTP server as a default server. In our experimentations also, we used to use the Apache server for running the web server. Simply by typing the service Apache start. So automatically the Apache HTTP server will start. So whenever you type the IP address of the system where the Apache server is running, :8080, automatically the Apache server's home page will come onto the screen. Next one is application servers. Why it is application servers are special in a sense? The application servers will provide not only the functionality or not only the resources to the web applications, but also it will provide the facility of the distributed protocols or distributed things like the enterprise Java beans, remote method invocation, common object request broker architecture, remote procedure calls. Many of the features are in addition to the simple web applications or simple web containers will be provided in the application servers. So because of the many features and many functionalities, obviously it requires high CPU consumption or high CPU cycles are required for this, and also memory consumption also high. Next one is it is capable of multi-threading, where in case of web servers only single thread of control will be there, where in case of application servers multiple threads of control will be there, because a same application may be connected to the RPC or maybe some enterprise Java beans. At the same time, it may take the request of simple HTTP. So like that, many services may be provided with one single channel. So that is the reason internally it has to maintain multiple threads of control. HTTP support, RMI support, remote procedure call support, and many other distributed protocol support will be there. Example of this is Wheel, WebLogic, and JBoss. These are the two very popular application servers. Actually, we are mainly focusing on the web server hacking because if you can focus on web server hacking, the web server is a subset of the application server. So that is the reason if there is like this lapse in the web server configuration, then we can also have chance of getting the control of the application server. So the reason we mainly focus on the web server, which is the core of either web application server or simple web server. First of all, before moving on to this, first of all, we should know what are the basic architectures available in the web servers. There exist two main architectures. One is open web server architecture. Many of the open source technologies like Apache or Tomcat or Node.js, see these are the various open source technologies. They are also providing the HTTP servers. Basically, these are the open web server architecture. These are things will fall under this open web server architecture, and another is proprietary architecture. Microsoft Internet Information Server (IIS) server is a proprietary architecture because it is a proprietary, that is, it's a paid one, and you are supposed to get this IIS server only via the the paid version of the operating system. So that is the reason this is said to be proprietary architecture. These are the two broad categories. And if you look at the open web server architectures, are mainly used by many of the web providers, such as any of the domain service providers used to use this web server architectures. So, according to the statistics, around 70% of the websites are running on the open web server architectures, and only 30% of the services running on the proprietary architectures. So that reason it is better to understand both the services or both the architectures. Then only it is easy for you to understand the how to the lapses or vulnerabilities that can be present in the servers. The open web server architectures will be like this. These are very simple architectures. There will be user and admin, and the internet will be there, and the web server architecture will be like this. So whatever the web server they will develop, it will be having like this. They will be having file system facility and application facility, and this core Apache server facility, and facility for running of the PHP, MySQL, and email. So SMTP is also a part of the open web servers. So that is the reason they will provide the mail services also. So this mail services will be having a separate database, how the mails will be stored and all. So that will be taken care by the file system. So this web server architecture, if you look at Apache server, there will be Apache HTTP server is there, and Apache Tomcat is also there. If you combine as a package, so this PHP, MySQL, Apache. So this if you try to run this particular system, or if you want to install this system on the Linux, then it should be LAMP server, Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP server. If you are trying to install this on the Windows version, and Windows flavor is also available, which is called Windows, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Next is NGI, NX, Lite, HTTPD, Node.js. These are the various packages or various softwares where you will find this open web server architecture. So the open web server architecture is very simple. It is having very few components and which are interconnected in their own way. Like that, many people have developed their own architecture. In Java programming also, you can develop your own server using Java programming, and at the same time using Python programming also. If you refer the Java to complete reference, there exists a separate code is there. You just to type the code and run it, automatically the server will run. Only thing is additional features and configuration settings, how to read from the XML files, how to read from the configuration scripts. So this should be modernized, and this should be incorporated in the programming of the server. Then only the full-fledged server will be implemented. So the core of the server running can be implemented within 5,000 lines of code. So the web servers are a server resources for both inter and intranet. That means you can provide the services to the internet and at the same time to the intranet. That means requests can be taken either via internet or maybe via intranet, and responses will be provided. Next is support HTML based applications and emails. The examples already we have seen just now. That is on Linux, Apache is the default HTTP server that you will find. If you want to run the Apache server, you have to run the command called service space Apache service space Apache start. And if you want to stop it, service Apache stop. If you want to restart, service Apache restart. Next, there are some other proprietary things like IBM's Domino server, etc. Next is Apache server, which is available on both Linux and Windows. The features supported in Apache server are authentication, SSL support, TLS support, and proxy support, URL rewriting, HTTP request filtering, support for the Python and Perl programming, and PHP support, compression support, intrusion detection support, enhanced logging. That means external intrusion detection systems like Snort and other popular intrusion detection systems can also be attached with this. In addition to this, any web server required the features such as virtual website or hosting. That means there exist many websites available. These websites must be launched on a web server. However, we cannot dedicate one web server for one website. That is the reason there should be a virtualization mechanism in which multiple websites must be in a position to run on single web server. So this virtualization mechanism is popularly used, and so that is the reason uh, to especially by the domain service providers like GoDaddy.com or HamaraShahar.com or many other web services providers or domain service providers used to use this virtualization concept to launch multiple websites on a single server. Next is friendly error messages. So the client or the user may not be well versed of uh, the internet. Whenever he goes to the internet and if some errors are occurred, then friendly error message has to be reported or to be provided so that user will come to know what is the error, etc. Integration with the external servers. Obviously, whenever you write a web application, it must be in a position to divert to the payment gateways whenever it is required and get the request from the or response from the payment services. Like especially in the electronic commerce websites, whenever you go for checkout from the by adding the items into the shopping cart, then if you go for the checkout, then the checkout should divert to the corresponding payment gateway. Whenever the payment was done, the response to be received by the web server, and the further ordering should be processed. So this is the integration with the external servers. Next is digital certificate support. This digital certificate especially will provide the non-repudiation property that in future the client or user cannot deny that he has not sent any request. So this digital certificate property, sorry, this digital certificate will provide this feature. So this digital certificate should be regularly updated or uh, to be renewed in periodical manner so that the security will be maintained and this non-repudiation property will also be maintained. And we'll see one more thing, that is IIS web server, which is a proprietary server and which is mainly used on many of the Windows servers. Internet Information Server, this is available on Windows. And if you have any Windows operating system, you can go to the control panel and go to the add Windows features. In the Windows features section, you will find this Internet Information Server. You check that and say apply. That is, click on apply. Then this IIS server will start. And whenever this particular feature is added, that means already these features. There are many features available in the Windows operating system, but they are not enabled by default. The user has to go and enable it in an administrator mode, and whenever it is enabled, then you can directly access via start button. In start and programs, you can find that particular service and you can go to that and implement it or use it. It is available for Windows. Available features are like this: process management, server side languages will be supported here. Support for legacy technologies, like the old technologies can also be integrated with this. So especially we started from the IAS 6.0 version onwards, and protocol listeners, security support, certificate support, authentication certificate support, authentication support, database support. These are the things will be available in the IAS server. If you look at the architecture of the IAS server, IAS web server, it is a very simple architecture, but it is a it is a very simple architecture. At the same time, it is uh, completely built based upon the loose coupling and high cohesion. So loose coupling in the sense, for every feature there is a separate component available, and all those are highly cohesive and working together to serve the request. So here client, then internet. From that, the first thing that will be taking control of the request coming from the internet is the http.sys. This http.sys is a very very important thing in the IAS web server. Many of the penetration testing processes or hacking processes will target this particular http.sys file. So what this HTTP.SEC will do is it is a kernel based driver, or we can say, which is it's a kernel based driver which is especially looking for the request to handle. So this HTTP.SEC, what it will do is it will be in touch with the WAS and www, and it will be in touch with the HTTP host.config file, in which the host configuration script will be written, and these two components will be in link with this svc host.exe. This svc host is the local host that where this server is running. In this, again, three components are there. Let will see component one by one. Protocol listeners listen to the protocol specific request. So if it is HTTP, then 80, HTTPS 443, then SMTP 23. Like that, depends upon the type of request. SSH, it is 22. So type of service request it is provided. The based upon that corresponding port and the corresponding protocols will be listened. So for this, protocol listeners will be there. HTTP.sys, it is implemented as a kernel mode device driver. Kernel mode device driver means it will be running on the hardware and will take the request from the network interface card and will process that request. So it is implemented as kernel mode device driver to listen to the HTTP request. So whenever I say HTTP, all the modern web servers will also is also having the capability of holding HTTPS request also. So that is the reason whenever I say HTTP in the current lecture, so HTTP in the sense you should also include HTTPS request also. Those are not separate; those are one and the same. So that is in general broadly, instead of mentioning HTTP and HTTPS, only HTTP is used always. The reason is all the modern servers are having capability of holding the or responding to the HTTP request. Next is World Wide Web Publishing Service. That is the World Wide Web Publishing Service. That means it will be published over the internet, so that anyone from the remote place or on the remote system also they can access the site. Next is Windows Process Activation Service. So with this sometimes the Windows services will be there. Like it may be connected to the Windows MS SQL server, and from that MS SQL server, the request has to come or the data has to be collected. In such a cases, this Windows MS SQL server has to start. So who is responsible for starting up that server, and who is responsible for connecting to the database and getting the request, and or any other Windows services? That is what the Windows Process Activation Service it will take care of, depending upon the request that is received. Next is web server core. So here this is the web server core. What this web server core is actually having. This web server core is begins the request processing. Whatever the HTTP request comes, that will be processed, and especially the authentication checking, authorization of the request, connection maintenance, updating the log, etc. All these things will be done by the web server core. So in this, these are the things which are very important, such as authentication, authorization, connection maintenance. So sustainable connection should be maintained. In that, that is the responsibility of the web server core. And The update log. One thing you are supposed to remember is in any server or operating system or any major services, the log will be maintained. So unless until log is not maintained, the server will not know that okay, what process was done and what type of activity was done. So the reason in operating system also this particular log will be maintained, especially the target of any attacker is if he won't get anything, at least a log should be available. If he can get log, he can say that okay, what are the activities happened and what are the type of activities that happened. And the same logs will also be used by the intrusion detection systems that are available on the target computer. Especially these IDS systems will analyze these logs and will detect the intrusions. And this is also useful for the security analysts for analyzing the security loopholes or security vulnerabilities or intrusions. So log is a major thing in any of the services. Either it may be a web server, it may be a database server, it may be a operating system. Unless until log is not there, you cannot go for restoring to the previous checkpoint. So that is the reason log is a very, very important thing. So the updation of the log, these things will be done at the web server core. Next, next is native modules. These native modules in which you will be finding this IAS certificate mapping. That is IAS certificate mapping means as well we have seen previously the digital certificates that has to be required. So these digital certificates whenever provided, whenever the request has come, obviously along with the request, this certificate will also come. This certificate mapping will be done by these native modules, and anonymous authentication engine, and static files and default files and HTTP cache and HTTP errors, HTTP logging, all these things are in the native modules. Next is in the managed modules. These are the things will be managed by the user or the administrator, like application domain modules, forms, and etc. So these are the things and others. These are the things especially maintained by the managed modules. This is the architecture of the IaaS web server. So in this, the main component the attacker will try to target is HTTP.sys. This HTTP.sys is a key of the this entire architecture. And once this HTTP.sys was identified, as analyzed or this particular thing was tracked, then you can easily come to know what are the activities that will be carried out by these things because it is directly connected with the kernel stack, and this is a two directional bidirectional service that is between the WAS and WWW to the core modules. So that is the reason this particular knowing of this particular HTTP.sys will can have a free hand or free access to the entire system. So this should be safeguarded always. This is related to the IaaS web server. Now we will see what are the different in how many ways this web servers may lead to the hacking. So because we should understand, unless until there is no vulnerability, the servers cannot be hacked simply like that. So for this, most commonly exploited vulnerabilities on a web server include misconfiguration of the web servers, software, bugs or flaws in the programming code in the operating system of the application, default installation of operating systems of web server software, lack of patch management to update the operating systems or web server software, lack of disregard for proper security policies and procedures. These are the five things which will especially uh, lead to the exploiting the vulnerabilities that are present on the web servers. The reason is web servers are not independent. Web servers should take the help of the operating system. Okay, so web servers are not independent and will sit on top of the operating system and will function. That means without the help of operating system, the web servers will not function. That means whatever the request it comes, it must be processed by the hardware first, then it should be going to the operating system, then it may be going to the web server. In case of the IIS web server, if you look at, there is a kernel driver. Okay, there is a kernel mode device driver. That means a kernel mode device driver directly will connect to the hardware. But whatever the external request has to come, like for example, Windows activation process service or Windows process activation services, this request again has to be processed by the operating system only. So the and the operating system has to give the response to this. Like that, if you have any problem or any bug in the operating system, then this may also lead to the hacking of the server. That means you don't think that the I have installed a web server with a high security, so nothing can be compromised. But if you have a weak operating system, the system is also in a position to compromise. That we'll see later in the tutorial sections. I will give a case study on the vulnerable operating system, vulnerable OS V2 operating system. Because of the vulnerability of the operating system, how a database server and a web server can be hacked using the Metasploit tool. That we'll see in the later section whenever we have the tutorial of the web server hacking. As web services devices are located in a publicly accessible area between two packet filtering devices, so this will also lead to this may also lead to the server hacking, because whenever anything is available publicly, then that can be used by the attacker. And these publicly accessible areas are often called as demilitarized zones. Demilitarized zones in the sense that there will be a big gap between the entry point and the main server. So this gap, in this gap, especially like the checking of each and every request or processing or sanitizing the input, these kind of things will be carried out in the demilitarized zone. It is just like if you are supposed to visit a VIP, actually you cannot directly go and visit the VIP. Instead, there will be some security checks will be there, in which you will be asked to leave your electronic gadgets, and you will be asked to leave your some important things. Are sometimes they will not allow the pen, even pen also. So like that, this sanitation process will happen between the entry and till you go and visit the VIP. So like that, the between the main web server and entry of the request, this particular zone will be maintained. It is not a separate zone. Here in the DMZ, especially, you will place the intruder detection systems, which is also called as demilitarized zones. This demilitarized zone option you may also find in any of the networking devices, like a router. Also, you will find this DMZ zone. In this DMZ zone, especially, you will mention what type of request to be received. Only that request will be received by the server, and these requests will be processed. That means we can say sanitizing of the data that is coming from along with the request. That will be done at the demilitarized zone. A device in the demilitarized zone is easily accessed by the organization's client system, therefore providing easier access to the internal system or database by a hacker. So that means this DMZ should be configured in such a way that it should not be accessed by the local computers or local clients. Okay, so the local clients in the sense any maybe a normal employee or all something, because it is connected to the local computer, local network. So any of the local client can directly connect to the DMZ. If such thing was happened, then it is easy for the attacker to attack the web server. So that is the reason while configuring the DMZ also, you must be in a position to take care of the configuring of the DMZ. It should be only for the administrator level. That means it should be in a private zone. That means a request has to come. It should enter into the private zone where DMZ is available. From there, the web server, and only the web server can be direct accessed by the internal people, that is within the organization, that is in the intranet, and internet request has to process only through the DMZ. The DMZ should not be given should not have any access, or the internet systems should not have any access to the DMZ. In that way, you are supposed to configure. So lapse in any one of these will also lead to web server vulnerability. Especially the attacker will look for these web server vulnerabilities and will try to exploit these vulnerabilities. The reasons for web server compromise, especially, see, you have seen so far many components that are interlinked in the web server functionality. Lapse in any one of these functionality or in lapse in any one of these component configuration will lead to the web server compromise. So now we'll see what are the various forms, various methods that are the various reasons that will lead to the server compromise. First one is improper file and directory permission. This is that is improper listing of the access control list. This will also lead to the web server compromise. Next is running servers with default settings. Default settings in the sense, if you look at in your router, if you want to connect to the router with your computer and if you want to configure the router, there will be a default username and password will be there, admin or user. So these are the default username and passwords. Actually, whenever you configure a computer, whenever you configure a router or server, the default configurations must be changed. Okay. So if you run the servers with the default settings, automatically default settings known to everyone. So they will first try with the default settings. If the with the default settings, if the attacker is successful in contacting with the server, that's all. It is the end of your web server hacking. So this is the way you should change the default settings on this. Next one is running of unnecessary services, especially like management and remote admin. These kind of unnecessary services should be removed from the or should be stopped in the things. It's just like whenever you purchase a mobile phone, what you do is you will stop all the unnecessary things. Okay, you will remove the unnecessary apps and you will remove the notifications. You will stop the notifications of remaining other apps, and you will configure the apps that what you require or that you will use frequently. So this kind of configuration changes must be done. Otherwise, the default configurations will lead to the vulnerabilities or compromising of the system. Next is security conflict with the business ease of use case. So many of the business environments, in general, the employees or many of the internal people will be sometimes vexed with the service security settings that you provide, and they will keep on asking you that why you require this many security settings and why this complex settings. So because of them, if you may ease this process of security policies, then obviously security policies will be weakened, and it may also lead to the server compromise. That is the reason you should not compromise in the security. You should say that okay, you have to follow this. That's all. If you be a security engineer or a security personnel at any organization, you should not compromise in the security policies. This is the policy of this policy to be maintained in the organization, and everyone must follow. So when you get that particular authority means when you are very confident in the server management, and there will be a predefined server management documentations are available, and in the documentation they will give you what are the standard security policies that must be followed to maintain the server in a secure position or in a in a protected environment. That will be that will be provided in the documentation. You have to follow the documentation and you have to implement those security policies. And also you should convince the manager of the organization or the chairman that these are the minimum security policies we must follow in order to maintain our organization secure. So this is the security conflicts with the business ease of use cases. Next is poor security policy, procedures, and management. Usually, even though the security engineers are very eminent and might have qualified many certification examinations in security of networks, but the managements may not understand because they are in the managerial positions. They may not understand the technical issues. So because of that, also sometimes the procedures and policies may be weakened. Thereby, whenever they are weakened, automatically that must be implemented at the server level also. and that may lead to the web server compromise. Improper authentication with external systems. So this is a very thing that which may divert the traffic to the malicious web servers that are maintained by the attacker. So that is the reason improper authentication may also lead to this particular thing, especially whenever you link with the external systems. External systems means that are the systems that are not available with your organization. Next is presence of default accounts. You should not maintain any default account in the web server. Only proper authenticated accounts must be maintained. You should not create any default account like test 1, test 2, test 3 like that. Okay. Even though you make it, you must provide a perfect access control list. Next is keeping unnecessary default backup as sample files. Sometimes some security engineers or some administrators will be somewhat lazy to take the backup. Simply they will back up and zip it and will place in the server itself, server folders itself. That will also sometimes may lead to web server compromise. Next is misconfiguration in web server operating systems. So server operating system or operating system misconfiguration may also lead to this web server compromise. As I told you that web servers will not work in its entirety. Obviously, they will depend upon any of the operating system services. Then they have to run. Next is bugs in the server software, OS, or web applications may also lead to web server compromise. Next is misconfiguration of this secure socket layer SSL certificates may also lead to web server compromise. Enabling of the administrative debugging functions. Don't enable administrative debugging functions. Use separate console for the administrator, or there should be a separate administrator console should be there through which only the administrator will enter and will configure the software. Like that, you might have seen the WAMP server or LAMP server. You will find admin console. Okay. So with that admin console, only the administrator will enter and will can create any database, uh, a database or dropping the databases or creating tables. Maybe done anything can be done along with that particular. We can say this is admin, PHP myadmin. Okay, PHP myadmin is one thing where the administrator can enter. This is a console where the administrator can interact. So enabling the administrative debugging functions, it should be done only via administrator console. Presence of self-signed certificates and default certificates. For the experimentation purpose, people will, some administrators will create their own self-signed certificates and default certificates. Instead of deleting them, simply they will keep like that. They may also lead to web server compromise. You look at, there are many sources. This is not exhaustive. This is a non-exhaustive list that I am presenting here. There are many other sources from which you can enter into the web server and compromise the web server. So, but these are the most commonly or most frequently happening things on the internet. So that is the reason I am quoting these things. These are the specific reasons that will lead to the web server compromise. And this is a non-exhaustive list, and there are many other reasons that are available. But what are according to the architectures that what we have discussed so far, these are the entry points, or these are the loopholes that can be that can be identified or that can be checked by the uh, hacker, for especially to compromise the web servers. Once, if this kind of things were captured or got the control by the attacker, then what type of attacks may be performed? These are the web server attacks, and what are the consequences of these web server attacks? That we'll see in the next lecture.